I think America is in the greatest danger of my lifetime, and I think DC is on the front lines. As you say, we are under attack by our own president, and we need an experienced national fighter who knows how to push back.
One thing I've learned in this work is that resumes don't tell you who somebody really is. Titles look good on paper, but character shows up in the choices people make, especially when they don't have to make them. And every now and then, you meet someone who walks away from power to do the kind of work that actually changes lives. I've seen that up close with today's guest. After working in the White House with Vice President Al Gore and at the Justice Department with Attorney General Janet Reno, she made a different choice: to step into nonprofit work, to help build something that would open doors for young people who had been told those doors weren't meant for them. That's where our paths crossed. At College Summit, now Peer Forward, doing the work of helping students find their way to college, to leadership, to a future they could claim. And now she's stepping into a new fight for over 700,000 people in Washington, D.C. who still don't have a vote in Congress. Kinney Zalesne, my dear friend, welcome to At Our Table.
Jaime, it is such a pleasure to be with you. It is always a pleasure to be with you, but especially in this setting.
Yeah, well, it's good to have you here. And I want to start off our discussion today with that decision that says a lot about who you are. You're in the White House, you're at the Justice Department, and most people would look at that and they would say, that's the path, right? But you made a turn.
Yes.
A turn into nonprofit work, an education-based nonprofit helping low-income kids make that transition from high school to college. Why?
Yeah, I will say a lot of my friends and family thought I was crazy, I have to say, because I had this great title.
Yeah.
I was counsel to the Attorney General at the U.S. Justice Department.
People would give a right arm for that.
Right.
Yeah.
And people from there were going on to fancy law firms.
Yeah.
But I just didn't want to. I wanted to. The reason I went to law school to begin with was to help make our society better. I know it sounds, I don't know, cliched, but that is what I wanted.
Yeah.
And I had this extraordinary opportunity to go to Adams Morgan, where a good friend of ours had started a nonprofit in the basement of a public housing project teen center, because he saw talent in DC, talent that could make it in college but wasn't making it to college. And I said, at that point I was like 30 years old, and I thought to myself, I've had a lot of friends, I've had a lot of colleagues, but I know who I want to work with. And I left the whole high-flying, legal opportunities, and I went to that basement in Adams Morgan to help scale his insight and his innovation.
Well, and that's where we met. And I think part of my initial attraction for you and wanting to know you more and to become friends with you was that we had both given up something.
Yes.
You had just given up this job, a dream job that most people in DC would fight for, would kill for, right? And then I gave up my law school seat at Vanderbilt in order to work at this nonprofit, to work with these kids. Do you think there was some notion in you that pulled you in that direction to even consider that out of the blue?
Yeah, because opportunity is everything.
Yeah.
And if we don't make sure that people get opportunities, we are not only squandering their talent, but as a country, we're not living up to our full potential. And to my mind, it's like, how dare we? How dare we not nurture the talent that exists in every corner of this city and every corner of this country? How dare we let kids who have talent and ambition and needs, how dare we let them go without the help and support that could launch them?
Yeah.
And so, and let me say, because you're talking about it as though, we gave something up to take those jobs. That was the best decision I ever made.
Best, hands down.
Right.
Hands down. Because it wasn't only transformative for the kids that participated, but I think it almost did more for all of us adults who were working in it, right?
I totally agree. In fact, I'm running for Congress now.
Yeah.
This campaign feels more like College Summit / Peer Forward than anything else I've done in my career. And so looking back on that experience and working with all of you, it was the peak professional experience of my life.
I think part of the magic for me, for College Summit, why I want to do it, first, for me, I had a personal attachment because I was a first-generation college kid.
Yes.
But for those of you who don't know anything about College Summit Peer Forward, part of what happens is this a selection of kids, and many of them from, low-income communities and low-income school districts. And these are not the top-level kids in terms of AB students. These are kids who get B's, C's, maybe even some D's. But those grades aren't indicative of the talents that they have.
Right.
The teachers see that there's something special about those kids, but it could be all kinds of environmental things that impact their grades. They're not getting breakfast and lunch, or their family's situation may be messed up, right? And it impacts them and how well they can do academically. But then they come to a college campus over the summer and with 40, 50 other kids, and they meet writing coaches from all different professions. Then they have this sort of a counselor coach, we call them a rap director, who is there to be giving them that motivational speech every time. Like, you can do it, you can do it. And then you have college counselors who sit down with them and help them map out this approach. Well, you also got that opportunity as a writing coach, right?
Yes.
Before you
That's
decided to join.
Right.
Was that transformative for you?
Completely. Completely.
Talk about that a little bit.
So JB had been asking me for a year or two to come and be a writing coach at one of these workshops. And I was like, I'm too busy. I'm really important in my big job at the Justice Department. I can't take time off to go be a writing coach. Plus, I had this image in my head, which was totally wrong.
Yeah.
But I had this image that I'd be like standing in a noisy gym and like teaching kids about punctuation or something, And I thought, like, I can't do that. But finally I did it. And and when I went to this immersive weekend to help 40 kids do their college applications, it was transformative for me. Not just because I saw the talent in those kids, but it was the community too, the community of this workshop. As you said, it's the 40 students and the 8 writing coaches and the college counselors and the rap director, and everybody, and people were white and black and Latino, and they were East Coast and West Coast. Like, they were everybody. And this community was so focused and intense. And we didn't talk about issues of inequity. We just did the work.
Yeah.
And the work was to get those kids from nothing in terms of their college application on a Thursday afternoon to completely finished on Sunday afternoon. Completely ready to apply to college. And when you have all those people focused on that singular job and you get it done, that is tremendously satisfying, transformative. And I left that weekend saying, this needs to happen all over America.
Yeah.
This work, this community needs to happen. So I went back to the Justice Department and I told Attorney General Reno, I love this work, but I have to go do that work. And you know what? A year later, she served as a writing coach.
Which is amazing.
At a Peer Forward workshop, because she got it. She got it in her bones. And what I'm doing now is, in order to capture that spirit again, to capture what I know we did for DC and for cities around the country, I know, like, DC needs it again, needs this kind of intensive, innovative, creative help. And that's what I'm trying to do.
And, I think the great part, and I think this is, and I see this in public service when I ran for the U.S. Senate, and I'm sure you are seeing this now when you're running for Congress, is that it gave people hope.
Yes.
It gave these young people hope that maybe for the first time in their lives, many of them 17, 18 years old, for the first time in their lives, they are all of these adults, all of these people that they don't even know, who are intently focus on them and their success.
Yes.
Right? And telling them that you can be whatever you want to be. You can do whatever you want to do. So all of the other barriers and the things that are clawing at them, that are trying to hold them down, that for one moment, for one weekend, those kids are walking in unburdened by all of that.
That's right. You know, literally yesterday, I was with a Peer Forward alum. He was a student at the very first workshop that I did once I was president of Peer Forward. It was at Georgetown in 2000. His name was Kevin Robinson. He goes by KR.
Yes.
Since that time, and that was the first time he'd ever left home in any way to do a residential workshop. Since that time, he got a full scholarship to Bowdoin. He had internships on Wall Street. He went to Tuck Business School. He then became a major investment banker. And then he did the thing you talked about before. He stepped away from the power to go back home, and he started buying up residential properties, and now he's got a multi-million-dollar real estate company where he hires his brothers, his sisters, his nephews, his nieces. He calls it transformational wealth, not just generational wealth. Anyway, this is a kid who we worked with at a College Summit workshop in 2000. And so not only does it give you hope,
it gives
you
effect.
Real success.
Yes. And then the impact that now KR has on all of the other kids growing up in his neighborhood, his family members.
Yes.
It really is an amazing, amazing work. And I know, listen, you've done so much. And after you did Peer Forward, you also did some time working at Microsoft. And now you are doing something that is just amazing. You're running for Congress.
I am running for Congress.
Why are you running for Congress in the midst of all of this chaos? And DC has, since Trump was reelected or elected again as president, there's been an intense focus on Washington, D.C. by the federal government. So, some people are like, I don't want that type of spotlight. But you're like, bring it on. I want to step into this moment. Why?
Because I think America is in the greatest danger of my lifetime, and I think D.C. is on the front lines. As you say, we are under attack by our own president, and we need an experienced national fighter who knows how to push back. This is not a time for politics as usual. This is a time for people to step up who have unusual skills and an unusual set of experiences and networks to creatively and aggressively fight on behalf of the people of D.C. I've lived here for 30 years. I raised 4 kids here. I love this city, and I can't stand what's happening to it. And I'm not willing to sit by and just hope that somebody else is going to fix the problem. I don't think so.
Yeah.
The problems are very complicated. They need somebody who has fought at every level, who has fought in the public sector, the private sector, and the nonprofit sector, so we can bring the most creative, innovative solutions. And we need someone with an actual track record of winning. That's what DC needs. That's what I think I can bring to this job.
And for folks who don't know you well, map out that track record of winning. Because, listen, whomever wins this race has big shoes to fill. Eleanor Holmes Norton has been in this seat for how many years?
She was elected 36 years ago.
36 years ago. 36 years ago. So DC, this will be the first time in 36 years that DC really has an opportunity to add a new chapter, bring new direction and leadership. And Eleanor Holmes Norton, who I know and I think fondly of, has been a tireless workhorse for the city.
Yes.
I don't think there's been anybody who could question her advocacy for the people
for sure.
Of Washington, D.C. And I know you respect that and admire that.
Immensely.
But tell us, for those who don't know you well, what's your track record of winning?
Okay. So when I worked at DOJ, one of the things I'm proudest of is I helped beat back the Republican efforts to kill after-school programs and other crime prevention programs, which once we got them passed, that is what brought crime down farther and faster in DC and around the country than had ever been true in American history.
Yeah.
And so I see echoes of that moment right now where the Republicans do these nasty, gratuitous, regressive kinds of things to our city when we know how to reduce crime.
Exactly.
We know how to build communities, how to keep them safe, how to keep them prosperous, and they do the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
So I won that fight, and that's one example. It's the kind of skill I want to bring to the fights today. When I worked in the White House, so I worked for Al Gore, as you mentioned. Al Gore did not invent the internet, but he was the voice, the leader in the administration who understood best what this new technological revolution was going to mean.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was our office, and I helped fight to make sure that every school and library in D.C., especially in Ward 7 and 8, east of the river, got wired for the internet. Now, nobody talks about that story anymore. It could have been, the internet could have been the next civil rights divide in America. But it didn't happen because the Clinton-Gore administration made sure that schools and libraries and communities everywhere were wired so that everybody could have access. So that's like an untold triumph, but I was part of that fight to make sure it happened, and I'm very proud of that, and it has lasting positive results for DC today.
Yep.
And then together we led Peer Forward, so we helped thousands of DC kids become the first in their families to go to college. But even more importantly, we were part of the movement that drove college enrollment in DC from under 40% to over 60%. And that's a lasting legacy to this day. And Barack Obama noticed. And in recognition of our impact and our success, he gave our organization a big portion of his Nobel Peace Prize money.
Which was a huge deal.
Huge.
Yeah.
It was huge. So, and as I say on the campaign trail, I did all that for DC without ever sitting on DC Council.
Yeah.
And some of my opponents in this race are on DC Council, but I will put my record of new outside resources and lasting positive results for DC up against theirs any day.
And you come in this, you have served in government, you've worked in a nonprofit, you've also worked for profit. You worked at Microsoft.
Yes.
What were some of the things that you learned in your time working at Microsoft?
Yeah. So first of all, I learned a lot about how fast new technologies move and the impossibility of government to keep up with it. The reason we have, one of the reasons we have no workable AI regulation right now is that the pace of innovation is so much faster than the pace of government. So we're going to have to come up with much more creative and innovative ways to get our hands around this new tool, which is transforming everything as we speak.
Yeah.
Everything. And I don't even hear other leaders asking these questions, let alone providing answers. But we are going...
And I think DC probably is almost unique that I think AI will probably have a greater impact on a place like DC maybe than any other space, right?
Enormous. I mean, look, as I said before, we're under attack by our own president. We have lost 50,000 jobs in the last year because of the reckless and indiscriminate cuts to federal agencies. But even if that weren't true, we would be having to rethink our economy because of AI. So we've got this double-barreled hit, right? We've taken a frontal assault on the core of DC jobs because of DOGE, and work is completely transforming. Blue-collar work, white-collar work, completely transforming because of AI. But so we need to elect people. We need to choose leaders who know how to grapple with this, who are thinking far ahead about where the jobs are going to come from, what kind of industries are going to be critical for us to have here, how we build our own startup scene so that we in DC can take advantage of the good parts of AI, but we're just sort of sitting back passively as we're taking hit after hit, and it's dangerous for the city.
Yeah. I want to get more into your vision for DC, but I want to get back to the personal also,
Yes.
because you're not just a candidate. You're a parent.
Yes.
You're a partner, a wife, a person living this life every single day. How does your personal life shape how you see this moment and how it shapes you as a candidate running in this race?
Yeah. So, yeah, I've lived in the city for 30 years. I raised my husband and I raised 4 kids here. They are between the ages of 18 and 23. So they're right on this cusp of like, what is the job market going to look like? What kind of work should I prepare for? What if I prepare for something and then those jobs are all gone? So I am deeply attuned to, what is the future of DC? What is the future of work? I'm the only mom in this race. And I think being a mother is like there's a certain fierce protectivity that I have learned as a mom that I don't think I had before that. And you fight for your kids. And my kids are all different. 3 of them are biological. 1 is adopted, a teenager we brought into our family a couple years ago. And so they're all different. They have different stories. They have different strengths. They have different challenges. And when you're a mom and you fight for each kid the way they need it, and you learn so much about possibility and just the relentless defense of your kids' interests. And that's how I feel about DC. Like we need a fighter. We need someone who understands that we have different strengths across the city. And yet there is more that unites us than divides us. And I want to fight for everyone in this city, every ward, every neighborhood, every family.
The word that you have said is fighter. And the one thing when I think of the representation DC has had with Eleanor Holmes Norton, she has been a fighter. And her number one issue has been the fact that DC and its residents have not had voting representation. And that is if you think about Eleanor Holmes Norton and her legacy, it has been fighting to make sure that there's been a voice at the table, but also fighting to get that right to vote for DC in the U.S. Congress. Talk about that issue and how important that is in terms of your campaign and what you think the strategy is, like the next phase of that fight looks like.
I think it is critically important. Look, there are 700,000 of us who do not have the same rights as every other American. No other democracy on earth deprives the residents of their national capital the right to vote in the national legislature. We're the only ones who don't seem to have figured out how to do that. And it is a result of a long racist history. And it's a 250-year-old mistake, and we need to fix it. I do have a 3-part strategy for getting there.
I'm not surprised.
So let me tell you, and it's a little so number 1, I think we have some more work to do in this city to rally support for statehood. If you ask DC residents, a huge number will say they support DC statehood, but it's not the highest priority for people. And I think we have work to do. So I've lived here for 30 years. I've been a candidate for 8 months. And my view is there are people in this city with power who don't think they really need statehood. And there are people in this city with no power who think statehood's not going to make a difference. So there is this sort of activist middle, and it's growing. And I deeply respect the energy and activism that they are bringing to this cause, but I think we have more work to do so that everyone in DC is really a soldier for the cause. I mean, it's a civil rights fight.
It really is.
And you don't win civil rights fights by sort of like part-time on the weekend, like if somebody else brings it up. Like you have to lean in. We have to lean in. And I don't think the whole city is yet mobilized in that, but I think we could be. So that's one thing I want to drive. Second, I think we have to elevate this issue in our own party, in the Democratic Party across the country. So that means at the DNC, in the House leadership, the Senate leadership, members of the House and Senate across the country. More Democrats have to prioritize this issue. So we once had, not too long ago, a Democratic House, a Democratic Senate, and a Democratic president, but we didn't get statehood.
No.
So, and that's because it was on the list, but it wasn't at the top of the list. So we have work to do, and I believe there is plenty of room for growth. I think a lot of people around the country just don't understand our issue. They don't know, and if they did, they would see it's in their interest to help us get statehood.
So one of the top things I would do is, go to Hakeem Jeffries and Leader Schumer and said, we take back the 6 and 26 or whatever it is.
Yes.
DC statehood needs to be one of them.
Right? I see it as a huge opportunity for the party. Not only because we would get 2 Democratic senators, but even separately from that, someday soon, God willing, the Democrats are going to take back power. When we do, we are going to want to recommit ourselves and rededicate ourselves to democracy, both for this country and for the world. We're going to want to signal in broad, dramatic ways that we are back in the democracy game. DC statehood should be the number one issue.
I agree.
We should say, after 250 years, we're correcting this mistake. 700,000 people in DC should have the same rights as other Americans. So it's the perfect issue to relaunch democracy once the Democrats take back power. So we have this opportunity to make that case. Mm-hmm. It's going to take a fierce advocate with deep relationships across the Hill, which I have. Mm-hmm. And so that's step 2. And then the third step is we're going to need to pick off some Republicans.
Yeah.
Because we can't beat the filibuster without it. We're going to need to find some friends and allies and find some kind of grand bargain whereby they get something and we get something. Mm-hmm. And so none of this is going to be easy, but those are the 3 steps, I think. And I think there's a real opportunity right now. I think people around the country understand a little better than they used to that we are treated unfairly. They began to see it last summer when the National Guard rolled in. So there's an opening here, and we've got to jump on it.
Yeah. Speaking a little bit about, again, staying on Eleanor Holmes Norton, I think people underestimate this position. You're a delegate in Congress without a vote.
Yes.
But I think Eleanor demonstrated what's possible, what you can do and what you can accomplish, and the seniority that you can gain and how you leverage that in order to do things. What did you learn watching Eleanor?
So I first met Eleanor Holmes Norton in 1995. Mm-hmm. I was working in the White House, and she was 4 years into her service as delegate. I had enormous respect for her then. I still do. She's a fierce fighter, a relentless advocate, and I pride myself on those characteristics. So I intend to model that. I think there are a few things I can build on from her legacy. So number 1, I think that she did an amazing job bringing us some partners and allies, right? Like when we don't have formal power, we can't fight for ourselves. We need partners and allies. And she had some terrific relationships from her work before being delegate that she could bring to our side. The Congressional Black Caucus was a terrific example. I think we can broaden that. I think there are more caucuses, more allies, more partners across the country who can come to see our fight as their fight. So I want to build on her legacy and bring us a broader array of partners across the country. I also think she did very important work to build the economy of DC. She focused on the transfer of federal lands back to DC, and that helped us with growth and development across the city. I think that's a really critical part of the job. In fact, I've been describing it as 2 things, and as I say, lucky for us, they rhyme: autonomy and economy. So autonomy is all we've been talking what we've been talking about, statehood and all the measures on the way there. But economy is critically important, especially because as I said, we've taken this frontal hit with the 50,000 jobs lost. Like, we're a company town and the company hates us. And so we can't just sit by. We have to plan for a different future that's less dependent on the federal government. I think the delegate can play a very important role here. And I'm the only one in the race with any business experience at all, let alone being the strategy lead for a Fortune 1 company. So I know how businesses think. I know what it takes to create jobs. I know about how to seed innovation and how to nurture it. And those are all the things we have got to do as a city. We can't depend on the federal government the way we used to.
Yeah. Are you afraid to take on Donald Trump?
I am not afraid to take on Donald Trump. I mean, we have to be strategic about it.
Yeah.
We have to be smart about it. We need allies to be successful at it. But I am not afraid of him. In fact, if anything, that's why I'm stepping into this race, because I can't stand what he's doing to the country. I know that people are tired of it.
Yeah.
I know that that bullies are always insecure and, deeply troubled people, and we can get past them. We have to get. I learned that as a mom too, right? Like you have to look them straight in the eye. You have to understand where they're coming from. You have to figure out their weak spots, and you have to win.
Yeah.
And it's the most important fight of our lifetime.
We've talked about some of your plans for DC. Any other parts of your vision that you want to highlight for those who are thinking about, who am I going to vote, or who am I going to talk to my friends about supporting in this race?
Yeah. I mean, I think it really does come down to autonomy and economy. Within the autonomy bucket, there's a lot we can do before, or on the way to statehood. We need legislative autonomy, meaning a bunch of random Republicans who sit on a House Oversight subcommittee should not be able to just reverse our laws on a whim. So legislative autonomy, also budget autonomy. They should not be able to just freeze our locally raised tax dollars. We should have control over the National Guard. We should have a vote on the House floor. Maybe we should have a delegate to the U.S. Senate. There are measures on the way to statehood, and all of them are critically important, and I want to fight for all those things. And then I want to work closely with the mayor and DC Council to reimagine our economy and set us up for prosperity, not just right now, but well into the future.
Yeah. So you had never run, I mean, even though, and I want to make sure folks understand this, when I was the DNC chair, you were not involved in politics, but you approached me and said, I want to help.
Right.
And one of the things that you created really on your own was this women's executive network of women in the business community who wanted to help, push forward, Democratic Party values.
Yeah.
Talk a little about you coming up with this idea and what motivated you to want to do that.
Yeah. Well, you motivated me to want to do that. So as we have described, I've known you for 30 years.
Yeah.
And I would say this even if I weren't looking directly at you, but you have always been one of my favorite Americans. And I have always wanted to do everything I can to follow you, to follow your vision. So when you got the DNC chair position, I was at Microsoft. I was leading the strategy team, and I called you up and I said, Jaime, I want to help. What can I do? And we came up with this idea to create this women's executive network. And here's where it came from. I could tell that there were, I wanted to bring new resources into the party. And I knew I could start at Microsoft where there's a lot of resources. But what I noticed in particular was that there were women all over the company who made a lot of money and they cared a lot about the future of the country, but they weren't involved in politics because they had their heads down trying to rise in a tech company, which is not easy. And a lot of them lived in Seattle and they never really met a Republican, so they just had no sense of kind of what the national political scene was about. So I said to you, I think I could gather these people. And I wanted to gather them not just at Microsoft, but at all the tech companies, get a beachhead in every tech company. I said, I think I can gather them. We'll create a community of these women to support the party. And you give me a speaker every month. This was on Zoom, right? It was still COVID when we created this. And we did it for 5 years, and we never missed a month. Every month, and the group kept growing, and we got people from all over the country, all levels of companies, and not just companies. I mean, it was and every month for 5 years, we met on Zoom, and we met with some of the women senators and governors and members of Congress, and there was this great exchange of ideas about leadership, about women's leadership, about the similarities and differences in business and government. And we got so many more people involved who had not been involved before. And now 2 of them are one of them is running for Congress, another member of that group in Florida, and 2 others are considering running for office. So we started, we mobilized people who hadn't been involved. We got them to put their money, their energy, their time, their creativity into politics, into leadership at a public scale, and it's symbolic of like we need more people involved. We need people from untraditional places. We need ideas on the seams, between the sectors, because just the same old government people are not going to come up with new, bold answers.
I agree.
And it was really successful. So thank you for co-creating it with me. But it's the kind of thing, that's what I do. I spot a problem and an opportunity, and I figure out who I need to help me create it, and then I drive it, and I drive it, and I drive it, and it works, and it grows, and that's what I want to do for DC.
Kinney, when you connect all of the dots from your early career to College Summit, to Microsoft, to the DNC, to this race, what's the through line? What has been driving you this entire time?
I am very, very grateful to this country. I know that's not everybody's story, but that is my story. My grandparents were born in this country, but their older siblings were not. They were immigrants from Eastern Europe, and they came here with nothing, no English, no money, no connections. And within 2 generations, I got to go to Yale, like you did. I got to go to Harvard Law School, and I've had all these extraordinary opportunities. And I love this country for that reason. I believe that even though it has not been fair to everyone, that our system of government and our system and our economy is the best possible way to give more people opportunity and promise. That's why I went to Peer Forward, to help more and more and more kids have the chances that I had. And it's still what drives me across all of those experiences. As I love this country. I love my city. I want to make sure that that everybody has the chance to prosper here. And so now I've tried it from every different angle, in the public sector, and those that was a great privilege to serve in the White House and under Janet Reno. And in the nonprofit sector, tremendous privilege to serve with all of you and to get the kind of results and impact that we got. And then to learn from the private sector. I wanted to understand, how would I really solve things if I had money?
Yeah.
Because when we were at Peer Forward, we had lots of ideas, but we didn't have a lot of money.
Didn't have much money.
So I wanted to understand, what would you do if you had a lot of money?
Yeah.
And then I thought, well, once I know the answer, then I can go and really solve problems, because I'll know with credibility, what people should invest in. And then at the DNC too, then I wanted to push, through the political party. So I'm just using the tools of every part of society to try to drive what's important to me, which is opportunity for everyone.
Which is so important.
Yeah. And now this one I think
so
is the chance to make a big difference for DC.
So, Kinney, we're approaching my favorite part of every interview I do, and maybe we talked about this beforehand. I don't know if I give you the heads up, but we give out a special award on this show.
Yes.
It is called the Sit Your Ass Down Award.
Yes.
So, Kinney Zalesne, who or what needs to sit their ass down right now?
All right, I have two answers for you.
Okay.
The first one is Todd Blanche. Our new acting attorney general.
Yes.
Okay. Clearly, Pam Bondi wasn't explicit enough in turning the Justice Department into a personal retribution machine for President Trump. So Todd Blanche is tripping all over himself to show that he will
he's tough enough.
He's tough enough. Okay, so in the last few weeks, he has begun prosecutions against the Southern Poverty Law Center, against Anthony Fauci's deputy or one of his chief aides, and now against James Comey again. And it's performative, it's gratuitous, it's so shameful. And as a former Justice Department employee, I take this so personally. I know Janet Reno would be rolling over in her grave, and it's a disgrace. It's going to take a generation to recover the culture in the Justice Department.
Well, and I just can't believe that they're going after the Southern Poverty Law Center. That it's just beyond the pale. So in essence, what you're going against a group that has bankrupted KKK, and all of these hate groups, and in essence stand on by the side of all of these hate groups, right?
Exactly. I mean, it's not like we don't have real criminals and deep corruption throughout the country. Like that is what the Justice Department should be focused on. And that it's so painful. So that's my number one candidate. And then I want to say one that I bet you won't anticipate.
Okay. Surprise.
Yes. There is a congressman from Georgia, Rich McCormick, who has just introduced a bill. It's called Make DC Square Again.
Oh, yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah, so he wants to return the parts of Virginia to DC that in the 19th century we gave back to them. So let me tell you why. On the one hand, you might think as a prospective, DC delegate, I might say like, oh, that's a great idea. Like, give us more people, give us more land, make us bigger. But let me be clear what this bill is. So first of all, it is intended to punish Virginia Democrats for having voted for redistricting last week, right? So what he really wants to do is
get rid of all Northern Virginia.
Yes. So take all those Democrats in Northern Virginia, give them to DC where they have no vote, right? So take the people you don't like and disenfranchise them, right? And make Virginia Republican again. Yeah. That's the goal. So it's cynical, it's corrupt, it's oppressive, and it shouldn't
it's
happen.
MAGA.
Right. It's right, exactly. And let me say something else, an even subtler point. The argument behind his facetious bill is that the shape and size of DC never should have changed, that there's something constitutionally required that DC be that 10 square mile area. And I want to say on that grounds too, that is wrong. Even now, we need to change the borders of DC. That's how we will become a state. We will still preserve a small federal district. Yeah. But with the White House and the Capitol and the Supreme Court, that will still be the federal district that's constitutionally required. But we do need to redraw the borders so that the 700,000 of us who live here can be a state. So his bill is wrong-headed and dangerous on multiple grounds. So I would nominate him to sit his ass down.
Todd Blanche and Rich McCormick.
Yes.
You both need to sit your ass down.
Exactly.
Your ass is down. Kinney, this has been so fantastic. I want to end here, and I want to give you an opportunity to again, make your pitch to the folks in DC as they make this decision. When's the election again?
June 16th.
June 16th, and there's ranked choice voting here in DC
for the first
as well,
time.
right? So I don't know if I'm sure you have some game plan there. Of course, you want all the first ballots that you can get.
Yes. Oh, and I'm number 1 on the ballot. They did the the lottery. My name will be first. So I'm telling voters, rank me number 1, and I am the number 1 spot.
Number 1 spot, number 1.
Mm-hmm.
What's your pitch to the people of the District of Columbia? Why should they elect Kinney Zalesne as their representative?
Yeah. Trump is crushing us on purpose, and we need an experienced national fighter who knows how to push back. And I have worked at the Justice Department, in the White House, building college opportunity across DC. I know how to fight. I know how to win. This is not a time for regular politicians to climb just one more rung on a regular political ladder. This is a time to recognize the stakes of our fight, to recognize that the power of this delegate job is in the person, not in the position, and to choose someone who's got both the deep local roots and the broad national relationships to make a big difference for DC.
Well, Kinney, and I'm going to speak to the people who are watching this just on a personal note. Folks, I've lived in DC and in the DC area, from 99 to 2012, but I've known Kinney Zalesne for almost 30 years now. And I can honestly say this to all of you. If you're ever in a fight and you ever need somebody to aggressively be on your side, to be a pit bull on a bone, to be relentless, but to do so with the biggest heart, you have that in Kinney Zalesne. There is no one better who will represent you and fight for you and your family and your community than Kinney Zalesne. And so, Kinney, it is a tremendous honor to have you at our table. Thank you so much for being my friend. Thank you for stepping up and being in this fight.
Thank you for everything, Jaime.
If you enjoyed today's show, please be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Follow us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pixel Plus, or anywhere you find your podcast. For bonus content and analysis, join our community on Substack at jamieharrison.substack.com. At Our Table with Jaime Harrison is a production of Vision Blue Media. Our founding executive producers are Jason Hyder and Jaime Harrison. Our producer is Kyle Kelly. Our content consultants are Ernie Grigg and Clay Middleton. Our digital communications are led by Lauren Brown. Our social media strategist is Nia Sanza. Inez Smolansky provides production legal. Title sequence by Tom Hunt. Our theme song, Blonde Gone, is written by Dewey and published by Alibi Music Library. This episode was recorded at the DNC studios in Washington, D.C. and engineered by Johnny Wood and Scott Brown. Very special thanks to Kinney Zalesne and her team. I'm Jaime Harrison, and I look forward to another conversation at our table.